Hello and welcome to the Football Hipsters Satchel Edition. What is the Satchel Edition, I hear you cry? Well, it's a new novel concept. We've started our new podcast and we've had some brilliant feedback, as we keep mentioning, so thank you very much. And because of that brilliant feedback, we thought we'd give you some more for your ears on a Thursday night / Friday morning. So here we are. We are doing these podcasts basically just to give you guys an idea of what's happened in the midweek Europa League and Champions League fixtures. There's a lot to get through, so we're going to try and keep these nice and punchy, nice and short, just to keep you in the know with what's happening around Europe. And also we'll have some time to throw in a few of your listener questions as well. So let's introduce my colleague who's joining me for this evening's show, and that is our Serie A hipster, John. Good evening to you, John.
Hi, Kris.
Right, so let's get straight to it then, John. We're going to start in order with the Champions League, and we're going to start with Tuesday.
Yep.
Tuesday's action saw it kicked off early with the long trip to Kazakhstan for Atletico Madrid. They drew 0-0, this, of course, in Group C. Not a lot to say about this game, in truth, other than it was quite cold and there was no goals. I think that's probably fair to say, isn't it?
Yeah, it wasn't the greatest game. Astana, very excited to get a point. Big achievement for them even being in the Champions League. I'm not sure how Kazakhstan qualifies as part of Europe, but, UEFA do like to make the rules up as they go along. But yeah, Atletico guilty of wasting the few chances that they had in the game, but nothing too much to shout about.
No, absolutely. The other game in that group saw Benfica beat Galatasaray by 2-1. Much needed victory for Benfica. We talked on the Hipster podcast recently about their sort of defeat, the 3-0 defeat at the hands of Sporting Lisbon. So they very much need to get their Champions League game sort of kicked back into order. And they came away with a 2-1 victory. Kind of close fought game. I think it was fair to say that they probably deserved it on the balance of play, even though Galatasaray missed a really good late chance, and of course Nico Gaisan got sent off for Benfica. What do you make of Group C and how it's shaping up at the moment? We'll give the table in a second, of course.
It's quite exciting. I think people thought Atletico would probably be doing better than they have been so far. Benfica, perhaps not so surprising, they won at home. There was the second goal by Luisao. There was an amazing piece of control, and the way he brought the ball down in the box and sort of shifted it and then rifled it into the top of the net. You would have thought he was a striker and not a centre back. So some good, exciting players, but perhaps not going the way everyone thought at the moment. Group C.
No, absolutely. We'll just give the table as it stands. What we'll do is we'll go group by group so that everyone can keep up to date with where the standings are currently. So in Group C, currently after 4 matches played, Benfica sit top with 9 points. Atletico Madrid sitting second in 7 with Galatasaray on 4 and Astana bringing up the rear in 2. And match day 5, which is on the week of, what is it? The week of the 25th of November. So 2 weeks' time, Astana play host to Benfica and Atletico play host to Galatasaray. So we shall keep you up to date with Group C. Moving right along then, the next game's on our agenda. Certain team you follow, John, mentioned Gladbach. They got a 1-1 draw with Juventus. This is in Group D. I know for a fact you watched all of this game. What did you make of it?
It was a great game to watch. Really exciting. Gladbach started the game and they looked like the team that had been in the Champions League final the year before, not Juventus. The midfield, we had complete control and dominance. I say we, as everyone knows I'm a Gladbach fan. Pogba couldn't really get into the game. Hernandez for Juventus had no effect. Morata and Dybala up front were just completely isolated. And if it wasn't for Gigi Buffon and a couple of wayward shots from Gladbach, we would have been ahead by more. But just took the 1-goal lead. In the end, it actually came through a bit of poor clearance from Chiellini. And Gladbach's, Gladbach stumbled upon that chance and took the lead. And then Juventus got one back in the second half. Absolutely amazing goal. Maybe not so much the finish, but the pass from Paul Pogba. If anyone hasn't seen it, it's I don't know how to describe a sort of chip, lofted
wedge
outside the boot. Just delightful ball. And Steven Lichtsteiner ran onto it, volleyed it home into the bottom corner. Great finish. Probably made more impressive by the fact that only, was it a month ago, he underwent heart surgery.
Yeah, incredible story, wasn't it?
Yeah, game finished 1-1. Hernandez did get sent off, a straight red card for Juve. Funnily enough, Juve actually played better with 10 men than they did with 11.
Yeah.
But I think Gladbach, pleased with getting a point. That's twice they've drawn against Juve now in the competition, so it's quite impressive for them. But I think they've probably a little bit disappointed maybe they didn't get all three. But to be honest, they looked like they were going to be the whipping boys of that group, and maybe now there's a chance for Europa League, which would be a bonus.
Yeah, absolutely. We should. That tackle was horrific, wasn't it, from Hernandez?
Terrible,
Both you and I are Inter Milan fans, and we he didn't do a lot at Inter, but he seems to have done quite a lot at Juventus. Not all particularly positive, for what I can gather. So that was the draw at Borussia Park. It's almost like you've done your mighty 90 ahead of time. So
I know. I'm sure I'll have something exciting to talk about from this weekend.
I was going to say you got this weekend's to go yet, so all gravy. We should definitely talk about the other game in Group D, which saw Manchester City from England travel to Sevilla. This was a game I was keeping sort of tabs on. It was quite a game, I think it's fair to say. Manchester City coming out with the points, first team to win in Seville, I think in history, if I'm not mistaken, English team anyway. What if anything did you see of this game, and what's your thoughts on where this group is heading?
I only saw the highlights obviously because I was watching the Gladbach game, but what really impressed me was that I think a lot of people going into the game, Kevin De Bruyne was dropped, which a few people were questioning at the time. But Raheem Sterling, who came in for him, had an absolute blinder in the game. Really, really played well. And for someone who, there's always a lot of hype around English players, and especially with someone with a fee like his. But he really took the stage, and that's what you need to do when you have that sort of hype around you. Prove it on big European nights when they need it. And because most people will know that Man City haven't done particularly well in Europe. So to get a result like this and to now be qualified already at this point in which is a really quite a tough group, is quite an achievement for them.
Yeah, absolutely. We should touch on that group, and as it stands, as you rightly say, Man City now qualified, 4 games gone. They have won 3 and only lost the 1. 8 goals for, 5 against. They sit top on 9 points. Juventus bring in second place on 8 points. I think it's fair to say those two are going to qualify. Sevilla back on 3 points, and poor old Borussia bottom on 2. But as you say, Europa League perfectly possible. The next lot of fixtures in that group again, 25th of November, Juventus play host to Manchester City, which is probably for the game that will decide top spot. And Mönchengladbach play home to Sevilla. So we'll keep you across those. Good group to watch that. Some good football being played, and definitely a really good result for Man City. Moving on then to Group A, we saw Shakhtar Donetsk beat Malmo 4-0. Not a lot to cover in that game really. Shakhtar sort of much the better side. Malmo down reduced to 10 men as well.
One thing it's worth watching just to see Alex Teixeira. And some of his nutmegs in that game were quite fun to watch.
He's quite a player. And also a note for former Arsenal striker Eduardo. Good to see him getting goals at the top level. He's got a goal in that game. So nice to see players that have had injury problems getting an opportunity to keep playing. So that's good for him. And also in that group, the Battle of the Galacticos, as it was sort of dubbed. It wasn't as bad as 2 weeks ago, but it wasn't much better. Real Madrid beating PSG by 1-0 to 0, a Nacho goal. Kevin Trapp will not want to see this one back. Did you see his antics for that goal?
Yeah, I'm slightly confused as to what he was doing. Was it Isco who put the ball through?
Played the ball through, yeah.
Yeah, Nacho come out. So this is Nacho the left back. Am I right?
Yep, absolutely.
It's sort of taking a shot from the byline because Kevin Trapp has basically run to the byline and the edge of his 18-yard box, and Nacho's put the ball back across. At first I thought, he's just crossed it back in, but it actually was a shot, but he didn't seem to have a lot of pace on it, and I was slightly confused as to what the PSG defence was doing as well, because I thought that maybe someone could get back for it, but of all the goal scorers, not one you'd pick off the list.
No, and it was very much a game that, in fairness, PSG were played pretty well. I think a draw would have been fair. It was one of those sort of games that never really expected to have many goals. Obviously, Real Madrid missing quite a lot of their key players still with injuries. Bale, Benzema, less said about him the better at the moment. And also James Rodriguez still not back to fitness. So they're kind of scratching through. And I think, to be honest, Real Madrid are qualifying from that group with a lot to spare. I don't think they've had to really get out of second gear. Where that table stands now, Real Madrid qualified, I think I'm right in saying, now on 10 points, top of the group. PSG second on 7, Shakhtar on 3, joint with Malmo also on 3 on the bottom positions. And the fixtures coming up next week, or 2 weeks' time, I should say. Malmo play host to PSG. That's the Zlatan game, where Zlatan, I think I'm right in saying, I read somewhere, has paid for a giant projector in the heart of Malmo for the locals to watch the game on. So that's quite nice.
Is it just a picture of himself?
Just a picture of himself, absolutely. Shakhtar Donetsk play host to Real Madrid that night as well. So we'll keep you across that one.
Just quickly on that Madrid game, I would spare a thought for poor Edison Cavani and the horrendous miss.
Absolutely.
A player who we both lampooned and started this season has actually been doing really well, and then it's got on the big stage to form. And messed it up.
It's a perfect time actually to mention that anyone that's interested in French football, people know that obviously I'm very sort of close to Liga and various things around it. Excellent article written by plug for another podcast here, the French Football Weekly journalist Jonathan Johnson, who writes for Bleacher Report. I will retweet the item from our podcast account at the FH Podcast, but it's basically an article entitled "Why Edinson Cavani Will Spend 2 More Seasons at PSG." It's a very, very good article about his form, and anyone that thinks that me and John are mad for saying that he's really not great and very average since his Napoli days, have a read of Jonathan's article, and everything will be clear in your heads. So there's a little plug for John and the French Football Weekly crew. And if you do like French football, obviously stay tuned to us, because we're cool and we want you to stay listening to us. But if you have time, do download the French Football Weekly as well. It's an excellent podcast.
The cool bit is questionable. But...
Well, yeah, that is probably fair. And when you see our bios go up, you can judge for yourself on that when they go on the website. Particularly look out for Danny's when they go up. Anywho, so that's where we stand as far as that group. One other game on the Tuesday. One other group, I should say. Manchester United just about getting over the line against CSKA Moscow. A goal for Wayne Rooney. That's rare, isn't it?
It is this season, yeah. There'll be some placards up for that, and maybe a open top parade. I think it was 400 and something minutes since United last scored a goal. Some interesting substitutions in the game, though. There wasn't exactly boos, but there were some very strange and confused faces at Old Trafford as Anthony Martial was taken off for Marouane Fellaini during that game. The Old Trafford faithful did not look particularly happy with that. But, it wasn't Fellaini who got the goal, but the sub, maybe it helped towards Rooney getting it. He fluffed a really easy chance earlier in the game, but I'm not sure what's going on with him at the moment, but he just needs to keep finding the back of the net. And one of those that old cliche, once you get a goal, a load more come along for a striker.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how his form continues. And at the end of the day, Van Gaal, I'm not his biggest fan. I don't think many people are his biggest fan, but, you can't knock it. He left Rooney out there and he got him the winner. So I suppose he can now say, well, I was right all along. So
it is, I think, the same amount of time that they didn't concede a goal as well, though. So that is the one thing. The defence has massively improved.
Yeah, fair point indeed. The other game in that group saw PSV, rather surprisingly, I think it's fair to say, dispatch Wolfsburg by 2-0. Deserved from what I saw on the night. Wolfsburg were poor. I think they only managed 1 shot on target pretty much the whole game. So looking at it before, I thought it was a game that promised goals, and we only saw the 2. But that leaves Wolfsburg it's a very tight group, to be fair. If you look at the standings, Manchester United sit top. 7 points, and then joint second, if you will, second and third, if you prefer. PSV and Wolfsburg on 6 points, and CSKA Moscow looking like the team that are going to go out on 4 at the bottom. Match day 5 sees CSKA Moscow play host to Wolfsburg. You've got to think Wolfsburg need to get something from that game. Manchester United versus PSV could be a shootout for the top of the table in that one. Manchester United, the home side. So interesting times ahead for the English club. So that pretty much wraps up Tuesday's action. On to Wednesday. There was a couple of real standout fixtures here. In Group E was certainly one of them. We'll start with one of the less standout fixtures. Nothing against Bate Borisov, but I think most people expected Barcelona to win, and win they did by 3-0. So not really a lot to be said about that.
Just Barca being Barca.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there was, in fairness, I think the third goal from Suarez was an excellent goal. Sorry, the second goal from Suarez was an excellent goal. And
they generally don't do bad goals in Barcelona.
No, they don't. Was it me, or does Neymar's new haircut look like he's wearing a do-rag? Or is he actually wearing a do-rag? I don't know.
No, he's wearing some sort of headband.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure.
Very,
it's very strange, confusing look, but
very
I'm
Ronaldinho,
sure,
isn't it?
Yeah, I'm sure it's trendy somewhere.
Yeah, certainly not here. Although I have been worn some very dodgy hair equipment myself in the past. Less said, the better. We are hipsters after all. We should definitely have a chat about Roma 3, Leverkusen 2. These two just love playing each other and they love goals. You're obviously our resident Italian hipster, so give us a bit of a breakdown on this game.
Yeah. Apparently neither team likes to defend either, which is quite fun. But they're both teams that like to counter-attack and just sort of say, give the other team the ball and say, no, it's fine, you can have it. And at times in the game, it was almost both of them just saying, no, we don't want the ball, you have the ball. Just keep it for as long as you want and give us space to run into. And that kind of went on for the full 90 minutes. Goal from Salah, I think it was within 90 seconds, something like that, right at the start. Edin Dzeko gets a goal, and then Leverkusen come back with Mehmedi and Hernandez, and then what Omer Toprak was doing for Leverkusen. The ball comes across the box and Salah's clearly going to tap it in. So instead of trying to make a tackle, he just pushes him as hard as he can in the back straight into the goal. He goes crashing into the net and the referee doesn't hesitate to give the penalty, obviously, which Pjanic then scores. Toprak, unsurprisingly, gets a straight red for that. As you know, I'm not the resident Bundesliga expert, that's Drew, but I do watch enough of it to know that Toprak has got a little bit of a previous on some silly decisions in games.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you want to watch exciting football, both of these teams are ones to watch.
Yeah.
As to how far they'll get in the competition, I think later, deeper into the competition, they maybe get found out a bit. But certainly going forward, they both have really exciting players.
Yeah. Do look up that sending off. It's really quite amusing. Not quite so fun to watch the Roma players desperately trying to get the player sent off, which indeed was the case in the end. But
it's one of those where it's that's a straight red card, but you can laugh at it because it's not a horrible tackle. No one will get hurt. Just hilarity.
Poor decision making, I think it's fair to say. Looking at that group, it's fairly clear cut. Barcelona qualified on 10 points after 4 games. Roma in second on 5. Leverkusen in third on 4, and Bate Borisov on 3 points at the bottom. So it's still very much open for second place there. And what will be really interesting is in matchday 5, Bate host Leverkusen. Again, you'd really think Leverkusen need to get something from, and Barcelona host Roma. I would probably expect goals in that one. I think it's fair to say.
Yes, they would see. Barca like to push up high up the pitch, and when you've got Gervinho and Salah, not the best technical players in the world, but what they have got is real pace. So they'll have some exciting counters, I would have thought, against Barca.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of tight groups, that brings us to Group F. Bayern Munich versus Arsenal was anything but tight. In fact, of words I'd use to describe it, tight is not one I would go with. It ended 5-1 to the German side. I think it was pretty clear. I know both you and I watched this game. It was pretty clear from the outset once Bayern Munich got in front. Some pretty poor defending, it has to be said, from Arsenal, and Lewandowski got the opening goal, and it was all pretty much downhill for the Gunners then. What did you kind of make of how this game went, and is it such a surprise almost? I mean, Bayern Munich surely the most informed side in the world at the moment.
Bayern winning the game, maybe not a surprise, but the scoreline certainly was. I think Arsenal have got the best defensive record in the Premier League at the moment. So I don't know if that says something about the Premier League, maybe the disparity between the quality in the league and how much quality Bayern Munich have got. But you would expect Arsenal to do better, and they definitely underperformed on the night. But Bayern Munich, take nothing away from them, the performance was magnificent, and if they perform like that through the rest of the competition, then they're definitely one of the favourites to win.
Yeah, I think that's very, very true. It should say there's a disallowed goal for Arsenal at 1-0 down. As Ozil sort of half chesting, half shouldering, half arming a ball into the net. And after the protest from the Bayern Munich players, that was ruled out. And obviously the rest is history. And Bayern Munich running out 5-1 winners. So that puts Bayern very much in control of the group. But the other game had a lot riding on it as well. Dynamo Zagreb turned up in Greece to play Olympiacos, who I know the Olympiacos supporters were very much sort of thinking that this was going to be their passport through, and it should be a fairly comfortable night. It was anything but, though, for Olympiacos. They went behind, didn't they, in this game?
Yeah, went behind. Then they had a penalty, which was it saved or missed in the end? I did miss the penalty myself.
It was saved initially and then blasted over the bar. Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously, I'm sure many listeners will know I am an Arsenal fan. We both are, so we were cheering Zagreb on.
Indeed.
And then Olympiacos just kept coming and kept pushing, and I caught the sort of second half highlights of the game, and it's fair to say that Olympiacos looked definitely like the team that deserved the win, and that's what they got. They equalised, and then within the last minute of the game, got the winner. So I think in the end a fair result, and it really does make the group look very difficult for Arsenal now to get out of it, who were, to be honest, going in before were favourites to get second. Now thinking about their two previous games in the group against Zagreb and Olympiacos, and looking at the losses they had there as serious mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. A brace from substitute Ruben Pardo, the hero for Olympiacos, including a last-minute winner, which was desperately unlucky for Zagreb, who on the night, I thought, before the sending off, they had Pavaric sent off for 2 booker balls. I think they were matching Olympiacos. They were doing all right, and I think towards the end they just tired and the extra man and the pressure told. The young coach at Olympiacos, Marco Silva, Portuguese coach, doing really good things with Olympiacos. And as John said, as Arsenal fans, it's the worst possible time for him to be making a name for himself in the game. But I think from what we can gather, if you look at the group at the moment, it looks a lot like it could come down to a last day shootout. Bayern Munich sit top of the group on 9 points. Olympiacos joined them also on 9 points. Arsenal and Zagreb both on 3 points. And match day 5 sees Arsenal play host to the Croatians, with Olympiacos going to Germany. So you've got to think that Arsenal and Bayern are favourites to win those games, which would leave it in a shootout between Olympiacos and Arsenal in the end.
Yeah, if Olympiacos get anything at Bayern Munich, then that is Arsenal out of the Champions League, which would be certainly a surprise.
Absolutely, yeah. Yes, that's certainly one we will cover. But moving on from that group then, Group G, not so much a sort of a fashionable group as such, but there's a really impressive Porto side. They're really starting to find their groove, particularly in Europe. They got a 3-1 victory away at Maccabi Tel Aviv, which is, insert cliche here, never an easy place to go. They ran out 3-1 winners on the night. That sort of puts them in charge of this group, but the side that they're building there, I think it's fair to say it's a new side. They've let go of an awful amount of players. But on the night, too powerful for the Israelis. Do you see Porto as being favourites for that group now?
I think the position they're in now, yeah, looks like it. As you said, they did, well, not lose, but they sold a lot of players. They generally tend to do that every summer, but the amount that went out now, I think it was something like 8 first-team players in the summer. It was ridiculous. But they've recovered. They've brought in some loans. They've got some new signings. Some of the younger players have been promoted. Obviously, the big new signing was Casillas coming in for Real Madrid, who was very unlucky. Actually, he dived the right way for the penalty that Maccabi scored, and perhaps actually shouldn't have got in the game. But they've got some decent players there. There was also a spectacular miss from Abubakar, which is worth looking up and worth laughing at.
Yes, former L'Oreal man, Big Vincent, absolutely. Goals from Andre, who's a real talent, I must say. He's worth watching. And Christian Tello.
Named in twice.
Absolutely. Christian Tello and Miguel Layún also getting goals for Porto. And that left Chelsea, obviously, their under fire coach, Jose Mourinho, really desperately seeking out a win. And it seemed to be going to plan when they got the opening goal from an own goal from think it's Dragovic, and then the same player then went up the other end and equalised with only sort of 20 minutes to go, and real sort of show of support from the Chelsea fans singing Mourinho's name, and they were rewarded by probably their player of the season, Willian. Not only was it his cross that the own goal resulted from, but he also whipped in yet another one of his now trademark free kicks. And Chelsea got a late winner. Indeed, it was in the 83rd minute that Williams got the goal, so within the last 10 minutes. And Chelsea get the victory. We keep saying, obviously, we touch on the Hipsters pod about what's happening at Chelsea, and it seems to be going from game to game, almost day by day, about the manager's future. More rumours today. Chelsea sit second in that group now. Do you still see them as favourites to qualify from that group?
I'd still back them to qualify. Yeah, I know they're having struggles. Things aren't going well for them. I know. Sort of fun is kind of made of Mourinho and his comments of the referees against us and everyone's against us and that kind of thing. But I do think there is a real thing in football that when things go against you and you don't get the rub of the green, everything goes against you. And when you're winning and you're at the top of the table, things will go in your favour. So I do think that's a real thing and not so much of a myth. But I think there's enough quality in that team for them to turn it round. And they are 3 points behind Porto, so they've still got a chance of finishing top as it stands.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, to draw a line under that group, Porto sit top on 10 points, Chelsea in second on 7, and Kiev on 5 with Maccabi. I think it's fair to say they're gone 0 points from all their games. And matchday 5, Tel Aviv will be hosts to Chelsea, and Kiev will... and Porto will play host to Kiev in the other game. You'd think that Porto only really need a point to qualify from that group. And finally, for the Champions League this week, we go to Group H, D-Day in that group for Lyon. And it didn't really go well, did it, when they played Zenit St. Petersburg at home?
No, not really. Losing 2-0 to Zenit, and it was the Zubayev and Holke show, really, the two of them combining for both goals. Just a very solid performance, as Zenit have done the whole way through Champions League this season. Just looked quite consistent and not really fazed by it. Not currently doing as well in the Russian league as expected, but in Europe seem to be doing well.
They've really impressed, haven't they? I mean, it's I think the only team that's won it. I think I'm right saying the only team that's won 4 out of 4. Andre Villas-Boas saying it's his final season at Zenit in Russia. As we said, 4 wins out of 4. I mean, you can't ask for any more. And do you think certain teams that, as the cliche goes, won't really want to draw them in the second round?
Yeah, I mean, the second round of the first knockout round is in February of next year, isn't it? So, going to play in Russia that time of year is never easy. I think they do early kickoffs, don't they, for the Russian games?
Yes.
In that sort of time of year as well. So that's something players aren't used to. I know for most normal people, we go, well, all right, you kick off 3 hours earlier than normal, that's fine. But it's just the way your body clock is set for football, or the way footballers have their body clock set. So I think they can surprise a few people. They've got some very good players there, a few more experienced players that have been in Europe for a few years. So it really depends on the draw. The best, obviously, them being top of their group and winning it is the best thing they can do. So we try and avoid the bigger teams.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting group, this, because moving on to the final game, a goal from Captain Kums getting the winner for Ghent, and it's a historic first ever win for Ghent in the Champions League, and they beat Valencia, which is, on the face of it, yeah, it's not a Valencia side of old, but it's still a pretty big result for the Belgians. And looking at the group table now, they will possibly fancy catching Valencia, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think Lyon have been the big disappointment in this group, and Ghent have really taken advantage of that. So Valencia, I'm slightly surprised they've lost 2 games already. And losing one of them to Ghent, you would have backed Valencia to get a win there. But Ghent obviously very organised and stuck to the game plan and got their 1-0 win. So it gives them a fighting chance. I think if you'd said to them, we'll give you a chance of qualifying out of the group, and if not, you get Europa League, they certainly would have taken it.
Absolutely, yeah. And that Europa League place is certainly within grabs, within touching distance, even if they don't make the Champions League. If you look at the final match day, round 5 of the match day, the table currently Zenit sit top on 12 points. They're qualified. 4 out of 4. Valencia are second with 6 points. Ghent on 4, and Lyon really struggling. Players out of form all over the place there, and just haven't clicked in Europe. And some comments from Alexandre Lacazette suggest he could be off this week as well. So they're struggling on bottom with 1 point. Lyon host Ghent. That's going to be a massive game as far as the Europa League sort of chances for Lyon, because that's really all they can aim at now. That's at the Stade de Gironde, and Zenit host Valencia. And you'd think if Zenit beat Valencia, which you'd expect them to on current form, and Ghent can get anything from Lyon, then it puts a really interesting finish to that group on the final day. So that pretty much rounds up our Champions League roundup for this week. Tonight being Thursday, I should say, we had the Europa League fixtures. Now, as you probably appreciate, there's a lot of Europa League fixtures and there's a lot of Europa League groups. So rather than
I didn't know there was that many letters in the alphabet for the amount of groups there are.
There's so much, isn't there? It just goes on and on and on. So at the risk of going or the risk of sort of boring people to death, we don't want to go over every single game. But what we will do is just pull out some sort of highlights from the Europa League and just try and pick up on some of the groups that are worth touching on, and some teams that indeed are struggling. Let's start with Borussia Dortmund. John, what did you make of their 4-0 victory? Goal from Aubameyang, goal from Royce. They seem to be clicking in this competition, don't they?
Yep, very comfortable. They just look a class above most of the other teams in the competition, to be honest. There are certain teams. I don't like to demean the competition, Europa League in general, because you still have to compete to get into it. And towards the end of the competition, it is fantastic. There are some really good teams, and there's some great games to watch. Unfortunately, at this point in the competition, there are some poorer teams, and you will get some big score lines and some sort of drab games to watch. Dortmund at the moment just sort of really kind of just going through the motions and waiting for the knockout stages to begin.
Yeah. Speaking of big score lines, a team close to your heart, Napoli, and a player close to your heart, Manolo Gabbiadini, scoring twice. They won 5-0 tonight. What do you make of Napoli this season? Obviously, we've talked about them in the Serie A. They're very much in the mix of 4 or 5 teams that could potentially make it the most interesting Serie A race in years. What do you rate their chances in this competition?
It's always difficult with the Europa League because you have the section where the Champions League teams drop into it. But if it was the teams right now, then I would say it's a toss-up between Napoli and Dortmund as the two favourites, really. Napoli just look on great form, and when you've got a player like Gabbiadini, who someone who hardly ever really gets a look in Serie A, the only time he gets to play at the moment is the Europa League. And when he comes in and scores some of the goals or the quality that he can score, that shows some real depth. So they're definitely one of the teams to look out for in this competition.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Just picking out one of the other noticeable games that kind of caught my eye, and that's Augsburg in Germany. Again, apologies that Drew's not with us to talk German, but in the absence of Drew, they've really been struggling in the Bundesliga this season. They're sort of difficult to try and manage both competitions. They really have had a tough time of it, particularly with the rumours of their manager being poached by your boys, funnily enough. But they managed to come out with a 4-1 win over AZ Alkmaar of Holland, or the Netherlands, whichever you prefer. Raul Bobadilla grabbing a hat-trick. Turning point for their season, or just a very poor AZ side?
If they can take some momentum for it for Augsburg, it's a good boost for them. They really need it. They haven't done well this season in the Bundesliga. Bobadilla getting a hat-trick is always something to rave about.
Yeah.
But they've suffered. They don't have the depth to cope with this competition and the league, which is true of a lot of teams in the Europa League, which is I think sometimes why it's derided so much. And it's sounds slightly strange to say this sometimes for a smaller team, but losing Baba Rahman, who has gone to Chelsea and hasn't really played, is huge loss for them. He was a really good outlet for that team. So their struggles in the league I sadly think will continue. But maybe they can take something for this. But for AZ, really surprised dropping for them.
Yeah, it really was a real clouting. It's not what I would have predicted myself. Looking at just picking out some of the best of the rest of the results, a couple of the early kickoffs, Besiktas drawing it with Moscow. It's a good point actually for Moscow away from home in Turkey. Karabag, or Karabag, whichever you prefer. They drew with Monaco 1-1, a game that both you and I caught bits of, and it wasn't the best. The pitch was terrible out there.
Yeah, it wasn't exciting.
Ajax Fenerbahce, another game that I thought would deliver a lot, and it delivered very little, 0-0. Celtic losing at home to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's Molde. That leaves them really struggling in that group.
I believe that game had the oldest ever goal scorer in the Europa League. I'm just going to try and find... Hested, yeah.
40 years of age.
Yeah,
incredible.
Scored. Yeah,
Midfielder as well.
Yeah, Ronnie Dyler in some under real pressure now at Celtic.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, and rightly so. That's a competition they would have looked to have gone quite far in. Liverpool, they kept up Jurgen Klopp's winning run. They won 1-0 away in Ruben Kazan. Really good result for Liverpool. That Jordan Ive getting the goal.
Yeah, decent goal that as well.
Was indeed, yeah, absolutely. Villarreal as well, one of Tom's favourites. Goals from Soldado and Palacevic own goal, getting them the points. They actually went 1-0 down to Dynamo Minsk, but turned it round to win 2-1. Marseille, they continue to try and put things back in place. Nkudu getting the winner against Braga. That was a much needed result. And then again, another team close to your heart, Felipe Djordjevic getting 2 goals for Lazio as they won 2-0 in Rosenborg. There was also a game that saw Keita sent off late on. Fiorentina, another one of your Serie A teams, Josip Ilicic getting 2 goals, 2-0 win away in Lech Poznan. It's a good result for that.
Wonderful free kick goal, one of those as well.
Oh,
absolutely stunning.
Absolutely
worth looking up.
Certainly was. 3-0 win for St Etienne as well, the team that never scored goals. Well, they scored 3 tonight. Kevin Monepake, ex-Lorient boy, Beric and Roman Hamuma, very underrated wide midfielder there. They won 3-0 against Dnipro. Very good result that, in fairness. So they're looking good. What else we got? Sporting Lisbon crashing 3-0 away at a team, I've got to be honest, I can't even pronounce. I believe it's Skenderbro Korcha. That's what I'm going to go with. Skenderbro. There you go. Well, they're from Albania. I can tell you that much. They got a capacity of 11,000 stadium, and they sit second in the Albanian table behind Partizan Tirana. I can tell you that much. Other than that, I'm stumped. All I know is they did beat Sporting Lisbon. The fact that Sporting Lisbon had Rui Patricio, their goalkeeper, sent off in the 17th minute, probably had quite a big say in that game, in truth. But nevertheless, that's a shock. Tottenham Hotspur beat Anderlecht with a very late winner from Moussa Dembele, 2 goals in a week for him.
Good goal for him, and good goal from Harry Kane as well in that game.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, in the interest of being unbiased, certainly was. And then another big result was Athletic Club, or Athletic Bilbao, whichever you prefer, smashing Partizan Belgrade 5-1.
Very impressive.
And 2 goals there from Iñaki Williams, who made our Hipsters Team of the Week last week. If you go to our website or indeed our Twitter page, you can see our Team of the Week. He made that after scoring twice against Betis last week. He got another 2 tonight, and he looks a real prospect. I think Tom will certainly be waxing lyrical about him in the coming weeks. So keep tuned in for that one. The only other talking point I wanted to cover just before we look at the groups, there was a very odd goal in Victoria Pilsen's game with Rapid Vienna. Tell us about that one, John.
Oh, yes. I'm going to try and find the guy's name now because I've completely lost it. And if I don't see it in front of me, then I'm going to pronounce it all horribly wrong. Oh, where is his name? There he is. He scored 2 in the game, and Rapid Vienna did win it 2-1. But how do I describe the goal?
He fell over?
I mean, that's the easy way, I suppose, of saying it. It's Schobersberger. I hope that I've pronounced that correctly. But he scored 1 good goal, but then as he was running through clean one-on-one with the goalkeeper, he sort of stumbled and then kicked the ground as he was trying to kick the ball, and then fell with his other leg that hit the ball, and it sort of trickled past the goalkeeper into the back of the net. It's one of the strangest goals I've ever seen. We'll have to tweet it out from the pod's account, a little vine of it or something.
Yes,
it's definitely one worth seeing.
The goalkeeper's reaction was what got me. He looked absolutely livid. It's almost one of those reactions like, well, what can I do? I mean, he's literally fallen over the ball, kicked the ground, and just bundled it in. What can I do? It's a real sort of shock on the keeper's face. But it was a mixed night. Plenty of goals in the Europa League games tonight. I think there's only the 1-0, which happened to be one of the games I caught a lot of, sadly. But hey ho, we can't get it all. John, do you want to just give us a couple of highlights as far as league stand? I say we're not going to go through all the tables because we'd be here till midnight. But what are the noticeable clubs that are either looking like they're going to qualify, or indeed some big clubs that are struggling to qualify?
Yeah, well, as you said, Mulder saw them got with the win over Celtic tonight, got themselves qualified. They're on 10 points in Group A. Celtic currently bottom with 2 points. Fenerbahce and Ajax, Fenerbahce on 5 and Ajax on 3 points. So actually, two big teams there in the bottom two places in that group, which is quite a surprise. Liverpool now second on 6 points behind FC Sion, who are on 8 in Group B. So Liverpool, if they can keep their form up, should be going through. Dortmund, as you said, already qualified. They're on 10 points. Just one more win, and that will see them win top of the group. Napoli, 4 wins out of 4, 12 points qualified. And as for the other teams, Rapid Vienna also qualified tonight. 4 wins out of 4 in their group. The other surprise I had is further down is the Athletic Bilbao. They're top of their group at the moment, but they're on 6 points. But Partizan also on 6, AZ Alkmaar on 3, and Augsburg on 3. So that group a lot tighter than expected, and also Schalke as well in Group K. Yes, there is such a thing as Group K in the Europa League. They're top of their group at the moment, but only on 7 points. They got a draw tonight with Sparta Praha, who are on 5 and second place. Schalke should still be going through comfortably, but there's a few clubs you would have expected to be through by now. The other really tight group, the tightest group actually in the competition, is Group J, which is Monaco top on 6 points, and Tottenham and Anderlecht. That's not been updated. There we go. Tottenham are now top on 7 points. Monaco second on 6, Anderlecht on 4, and Karabag on 4 as well. So still a lot to play for in that group.
I think it's fair to say as well, I know we had a brief discussion on another show we do last night where we were talking about what certain teams that could drop out of the Champions League, and just for any of our overseas listeners or people that might be new to these competitions, just to explain what happens at the end of the Champions League is that the third place teams in the Champions League groups get seeded and then get dropped into the knockout round of 32, joining the Europa League. So there's some big teams that could potentially come down. Our beloved Arsenal could potentially be one of them. But there's some fairly big sides, and there's also some fairly long distance trips for sides in the Europa League. It's going to be really interesting, isn't it, to see who actually does qualify, and indeed who takes this competition seriously when it gets to its knockout stages in February.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very difficult competition to judge until the Champions League groups have dropped down into it. Excuse me. The other issue, as you say, is the distances covered. The teams that are left in, when sometimes you have teams in Russia, for teams in Western Europe, it's a long trip. And obviously I know that also affects the Russian team as well, but generally the teams in the so-called sort of bigger leagues tend to kind of look down on this competition and not really be that interested in it unless it's sort of the quarter-final stage. Then they might start to take it more seriously. But obviously at the moment it's definitely Napoli and Dortmund are the two favourites I would pull out.
Absolutely. Just on that very subject, as we wrap up this first edition, as it were, with it, we'll do some listener questions, but we'll wrap up this part. I just want you to tell me, as we stand right now, so with plenty of games to be played in both competitions, who is your favourite for the Champions League and your favourite for the Europa League?
For the Champions League, I think it's got to be Bayern Munich. Just purely on the quality of the players they've got in their squad. Barcelona, yeah, absolutely. If everyone's fit, their front three can score against any team. But I think they've got question marks at the back. Same with Real Madrid. Very exciting going forwards. Defence questionable. PSG, I'd probably put in the tier below that. And actually, I think maybe even Man City to a certain degree. I think they might surprise a few people. Not win the competition, but maybe get a bit further than people expected. But Bayern Munich, I think they've just got quality in every single position and depth in those positions. As for the Europa League, yeah, I think I'm gonna back Napoli for now. As I say, it will depend on who drops into the competition from the Champions League and who decides to take it seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. Judging it as it is right now, I'm going to agree with you on Bayern, and I'm going to go for Dortmund as far as the Europa League goes. It's a German double, but we shall see. As we say,
Would make a good Super Cup next.
Oh,
Next
it would,
year.
wouldn't it? I never even thought about that. Yeah, absolutely. But these podcasts will be. We're only doing these extra pods on weeks of the European games. We might do the odd one during the international breaks just to keep everybody up to date. So, but we all know that not everyone likes international football. So tweet us your views if you want to hear more of us and you want to hear more of these little sub pods or satchels as we're calling them. Then just let us know. Obviously, your feedback is important to us. Speaking of feedback, to wrap up the show tonight, condensed, quick, punchy version. We got a couple of listener questions. Let's chuck these at you, John. Firstly, Facile, I think it's Facile Goose. I think it's how it's pronounced, at Facile Goose. He pulls up the quotes that Philippe Auclair made. And just for those who haven't seen it, his tweet was in French, of course, but in English it translated as, curious that we no longer talk of terminal decline of English clubs in Europe, 6 games and 5 wins. That's across all the English sides. Facile wants to know, John, in your opinion, can it be reversed or has the decadence set the rot?
It's very difficult. I don't think it's necessarily a problem of quality. Real Madrid, Barcelona, Bayern Munich, they can attract certain players of a particular level, and there are clubs in England that can do that as well. I think the issue comes partly in mentality and the style of play, and also just the physicality of the Premier League, the pace it's played at compared to on the continent. European football, or in the European Cup, it's played at a slower pace, and you can build into games, and you have to sometimes be able to sit there and not have the ball for 30 minutes, or just pass it around for 20 minutes at games, and then go to attack. And English sides aren't used to doing that; they're more going at each other constantly. So I think that's in part of it. And yeah, I mean the money side definitely is an effect. I do think English clubs tend to spend perhaps a little bit too much money on players than what they're actually worth. But that also comes with the fact that because we have more money in the league, then a club will charge you more for a player. So it's definitely something that needs to be improved on because the Premier League is currently struggling on its coefficient.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Mo, who's at Gooner for Life 96, he wants to know what you think of, if indeed anything, of Tielemans, the midfielder from Anderlecht. Rave reviews. He's a favourite of FIFA and Championship Managers players across the world. What have you seen of this lad, and what do you make of him?
I actually watched him a little bit tonight because I was watching the Spurs Anderlecht game. And he was very impressive. I've seen him a couple of times. I think he played in the game against Arsenal when Arsenal played. I'm sure he did. Lots spoken about him. Very good on the ball, but looked very composed for his age. You've probably seen more of him than I have, I would suspect, Kris.
Maybe.
So I'll tell you what. I'll throw the question back at you. What do you think of him, or what impression do you get from seeing him?
I like the look of him. It's very difficult when you bring a player over from a league that is, with all due respect to the Belgian league, it's not of a standard that you can judge players accurately on. Now that's not to say that he won't perform, because there's plenty of players that have made the transition. The same can be said for the Dutch league, or indeed to a degree the French league, if I'm being completely honest. But like you, I like the look of him. As a player, he's creative. He's strong on the ball. It's not a particularly big player. And when you look at sort of central midfielders, you often think they're sort of massive, imposing players. But he's not like that. Don't get me wrong. He's got a frame on him, but he's not huge. He's only 18 years of age, which a lot of people, again, don't necessarily realise. He's only a young lad, but he's already made 80 odd appearances for Anderlecht in his sort of full career of spanning 3 seasons, and in that time he's won a league and runner up in a cup and won a Super Cup, so he's used to winning. As far as his future career, I think it's probably a bit early for him to be moving on at this stage. I can't see him going to sort of a big side in Europe, quote unquote. What I could see is potentially a club like looking at the English market, a Southampton, for example, who like to pull a player who's got potential out of a European league and put him in. I think he'd probably do a good job there. I think you'd probably agree he would suit Serie A for certain sides. he reminds me a bit of like the job Ekdal did at Torino, was it? I think he went to.
Yeah.
I think that sort of team where I think he could progress through. I think he'd do all right. And strangely, I think he'd also suit the Bundesliga quite nicely. I think again at the right club.
It's a very young age, isn't it? And
it
difficult
is
to judge at that age. I think the important thing is that he doesn't move too early.
No, absolutely. And 10 goals in 80 odd appearances. He's not a prolific goal scorer, but that's not really what he's there to do. He's more of a creative little player. So I think the future's bright for him. But if I was to say what I'd like to see happen, I'd like to see him stay where he is and develop his talents. So that's what we hope will happen. Who knows? He might pop up as a hipster's choice one day. So stay tuned. 2 final questions, and then we're out of here. Pete Gooner, at the PA Gooner, he wants to know. It's the North London derby on Sunday between Arsenal and Spurs, of course. He wants to know what is your best or favourite, whichever you prefer, derby in Europe. I'll extend that to the world, actually, because I'm going to go with a hipster answer.
Oh, well, for me, there's loads in Italy that are great, but obviously it's just the Milan derby for me. It's just amazing to have the 2 teams, fierce rivals, that play in the same stadium, which is such a foreign concept to English fans anyway. It's just amazing, and the atmosphere and the theatrics in the stadium, this amazing split you get with you can see black everywhere, but then it's black and blue or black and red, and there's just this clear colour divide around the stadium. It looks fantastic. There's so many great ones. The Derby d'Italia as well between Inter and Juve, another one, just amazing atmosphere. But across Europe, there's plenty of great derbies to be seen.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. I'm just going to go left field. I'll pick a hipster choice, and I'm going to go with the River Plate Boca Juniors derby. World football, of course, but it's an absolute ripper. Whether you support either side or whether you've never watched Argentine football, whether you think it's good or bad, it's just the atmosphere, absolutely incredible. And one of our friends, Chris Highland, has been to one of the games, and some of the audio he sent back to us, it's just incredible. I think it's quite a scary place to be, from what I can gather. But just a wonderful spectacle, and 2 teams that there's
the noise you hear and stuff just watching it.
Absolutely.
I mean, I've only ever watched it sort of over the internet, and it just looks amazing.
And then the sort of the way the fans congregate before the games, and the spectacle they put on with all the streamers and fireworks. It's just amazing atmosphere. Should also probably chuck in the Glasgow derby, Rangers and Celtic back in the day. I think for atmosphere alone, probably one of the very biggest in world football. Maybe it's lost a bit of its shine because of Rangers' financial woes dropping down the divisions in Scotland, and Celtic maybe not being the sort of side they used to be. But I think when those 2 do end up getting back together again, and they're on a similar footing, which hopefully will come sooner rather than later for Scottish football, that'll be worth looking at as well. So
absolutely.
And do tweet us your favourites. If you're around the world and you've got your own individual derbies, it might be from the Norwegian League. You might have a favourite derby from the Indian Premier League. It might be an MLS game, for example. There's plenty of derbies all around the world with fierce rivalry. So tweet us your best, and we'll see if we can cram those into Monday's Hipster Pod. More on that in a second. But our final question tonight comes from Josh Maddox, and he says this is a question we're going to extend to Monday's pod, but we're going to give an answer just from the Champions League this week. And he wants to know who are the best young players in the world right now who may be going under people's radar. Now, John, you've picked one out from your beloved Mönchengladbach.
Oh yeah, I couldn't resist. When you threw the question at me earlier, I was frantically scrambling through the teams that are in the Champions League and thinking which player to pick, and then it struck me, of course, I couldn't pick anyone but the dude. Now, no one else refers to him as the dude, that's just me. His name's Mahoud Dahoud. Where's the number 8 for Gladbach? Just a wonderful midfielder. I've probably spoken about him before on the Mighty 90 and on the Hipsters pod anyway. But just real composure and intelligence for a player so young. Starting to get talked about a little bit now in Germany. He's Syrian born, but he's played through the German youth setup nationally, and hopefully sometime soon we'll get a call up to the national team. But he's passing on the ball and his eye for a pass is great, and just to be able to play in a game like he did this midweek against Juventus, against some of the level of players like Claudio Marchisio and players like Pogba who are so hyped up, and Chiellini, Bonucci, all these greats in Italian football, and just look completely at ease on the pitch is a real attribute for someone his age. Just amazing.
any chance he could be poached by Germany, or does that extend? His family tie not extend that way?
No. Sorry, he's appeared for the German
Oh, he
national
has.
team
My
at youth levels. Yes, yeah. So I think
another
it's,
star.
yeah, another technically gifted German midfielder coming through. Yeah.
Okay, who'd have thought? Yet another one. I've gone with one from Tom's region, from La Liga. I've gone with Jose Maria Jimenez, who's a centre back for Atletico Madrid. Wears the number 24, right-footed defender. He's a centre back born in Uruguay, in Toledo to be exact. He made his breakthrough season, really. He had sort of one appearance in the 2013-14 season, but he made 20 appearances for Atletico last season, and this year he's already made 9. And he, to me, just looks like kind of the next big thing as far as defensively goes. It's very difficult to pick out a sort of a up and coming defender because you never know how they're going to develop. But he's a big lad. He's quick across the ground, technically very good, uses both feet. He just looks like one of the new wave of defenders across Europe making his name. And obviously being South American, he's technically very good as well, which nowadays I think you have to be. And for our English listeners, you think about sort of how Rio Ferdinand, for example, developed his game, bringing the ball out from the back. I think this lad is very much going to be another one of those, but he could certainly mix it as well. I know in the Madrid derby last year, he was throwing himself around. So I think he's definitely one to watch, and learning from someone like Diego Godin, a fellow Uruguayan, is only going to help his development as a player. So he's definitely one to keep a note of as well. So there you go. That answers our couple of listeners' questions this week. Thank you for those. If you've got any more for us, obviously give us a tweet at the podcast account, which is at the FH Podcast, and we'll do our best to get those in. We'll do a tweet on Monday asking for questions for the pod, and then obviously these pods each week that we do on the European weeks, we'll get through those questions as well. And if you've got any specific questions relating to Europa League or Champions League games, obviously this is your platform to do so. That's pretty much brings us to the end of our very first Hipsters Satchel. We have covered quite a lot tonight, John. I think it's fair to say. Yeah. On Monday we shall be returning. Usual format, of course. Our website, it's underway, isn't it? We've had quite a lot of stuff done for it the last few days.
Yeah, got some new exciting things on there and more to be added, so keep checking back.
Absolutely. That is the footballhipsterspodcast.co.uk if you want to have a look at that. Things going on and being sorted day by day. Also, we're trying to get our uploads done a bit quicker. We've had a bit of problems with iTunes and all sorts, teething problems, as they say, but we think we've got to the bottom of those, so hopefully this should be out fairly quickly tomorrow.
We're also on Stitcher as well now.
Absolutely. Good point. Yeah, we're on Stitcher, so hopefully people can download us from Stitcher as well. We're looking at doing some interviews. I've got an interview lined up with a Polish journalist in a few weeks' time, so we're going to look at the Polish league and hopefully try and find the new Robert Lewandowski maybe. And we're going to try and get some more people on as well with some interviews, so let us know what you think, or if there's anyone you really want us to go after. We'll do our very best. And as usual, just keep sending us your views, keep sending us your thoughts, share whatever you've got. Keep an eye on our Twitter account. We'll be tweeting our Hipsters Choice and Team of the Week after Monday's pod. At the moment, we don't know who's on because we haven't sent out the pigeons to search for our various hipsters who are out combing their hair and polishing their glasses right now, but I'm sure they'll be back. So that's pretty much it from us for tonight. Just want to say thank you to John for recording this pilot edition of the Hipsters Satchel. So thank you to John.
Pleasure as always, Chris.
And from me, Chris, your host, we will speak to you again on Monday. As always, keep your beard strong and your glasses trendy, and we'll speak to you on Monday.